Hey everyone, I just wanted to stop by real quick for this podcast starts. Say you should like, comment, and subscribe. And don't forget to follow me at all my social medias at John D. Clouser, literally the same name as the name that you subscribe to on this YouTube channel. So enjoy this clip, and I'll see you guys on the other side.
Welcome to The John Show with your host, John Doogie Clouser.
All right. What is going on, everyone? How are you? You're going to hear a little bit of crack sound. You hear that? All right, because I didn't plug in my laptop to the auto box, so I just did that. So that's what caused that sound. So I apologize. What's going on, everyone? How are you? So we're here on a new episode. This is episode, 67 of my show, The John Show, with your host, John D. Clouser. Hope you guys are doing well. We are another week out of what we call the new C word, COVID. So, we're slowly climbing over it. It was like a Mount Everest that we all had to attempt, which none of us really wanted to do. None of us signed up for. So, yeah, like I said, we're doing well. Wearing a mask, not wearing a mask. I'm slowly, in my neck of the woods where I live, you don't have to wear one now by, I guess, the law of the land. I have one. I use a gator, but did you guys just watch I saw my stuff from a third party source, so who knows what it is. I did like a brief little summary over the Fauci emails. Kind of interesting remember how he said at the beginning of this whole thing that masks aren't going to work, and the reason why he said that was because there wasn't enough masks to go around, so he needed to make sure that there was going to the hospitals. Okay, makes sense. Kind of it's iffy up in the air on that one because understandable. Am I in the medical field? No. But do I need to wear a mask? Well, if it was going to help me at the beginning of it, yeah, I think it probably would have. And then we started wearing masks, but then now the emails were saying that the masks were absolutely pointless. And so anyway, I don't know. See, all up in the air. It can't just be simple that we had a pandemic. The whole world went to shit for a bit. Nope. There also now has to be something about, maybe this whole thing was just a big misunderstanding about a lot of different things. It's a good time. It's a good time to be alive. Isn't this fun, guys? So, so I came in out of this podcast. I'm doing this on another day than I normally do it. I'm doing on Sunday. I normally do this on Monday. I just wanted to get it done and over with. I had some time, and I stayed up super late last night because I was finishing up a story, which I don't know why. So it's so funny. So I write short stories, and I most of the time I do nothing with them. I write them, and then I'm like, all right, well, I'm done, because I think they're just good help to iron out of an idea. So if you can sit down and fully write out a thought of a whole story, I feel like you have a lot more understanding of it. So then when you put it into a script form, and then when you take it and you make it to a short film, it just makes it easier to do it. Because you have a better understanding. So you can then just cut out the big chunks and use those that are the most visual understanding chunks. That's going to tell your story. Or, yeah. So I just finished writing one that was close to 18 pages, which was good. That means my ideas and my thoughts they're getting more constructed, and they're getting fuller. 'Cause, I'm not, sometimes is 18 a lot of pages? Kind of. But in retrospect, in Word, it's 18 pages in Word. So in if it got printed, it'd be close, maybe 10. Is that even that's what you want. You want your story to have some length to it. And yeah, right now, like I said, It's like 18 pages. But like I just now finished it. Now it has to be edited. In the sense of like now I'm going to have to take out things because this version is the version that you just write out everything. So even if like you're like thinking like, okay, well maybe I write myself into a wall right there. Well, don't worry about that. Just continue writing what you need to get out. And then what you're going to do is you're going to take like the big parts and the parts that are actually connected to like another big main part that is part of the story. You're going to connect those two and then you're going to move on. And then like you're going to get rid of the crap that doesn't make any sense. And then you're going to rewrite and connect the dots again. And then it'll be all good. So you don't even have to worry about that. So that's what that version is. So a lot of it is a lot of coherency. So a lot of it is just going to be things that like I would say about 45%, about 40% of it is going to be cut out. Probably I'm going to ditch it because it's not worth it. And it doesn't push the story along. It was just like a weird thought that I had at the time. And that's what you have sometimes when you're writing. You just have these weird little thoughts. You're like, oh yeah, that totally works. That totally makes sense of like the whole of like, and that's going to be the main thing that I want people to understand of the story. And it ends up not being any of it. It's literally none of that. So that's what I've been working on last night. I finished that. And then, I went to work. And I came home and I'm like, dude, I have nothing. Like, I am so tired because I was running on like maybe 2.5 hours of sleep. I was doing laundry, literally fell asleep in the middle of doing laundry. I'm like, I was folding my socks. I'm like, I'm just going to lay down for a second. And I was out. So I woke up, finished like 2 more loads. And then like I was like, okay, well, John, like you have some time. You just need to finish this podcast. You need to do your podcast, and so you can be ready and start doing the ones that you have this coming week and all that projects. Because I have I have 2 weird side projects that are going on right now, and I have productions on this week, so I need to focus more on that instead of having to worry about other things. So as soon as I can get all this stuff done, my own stuff, I can then just focus on the pre-production and then also the story, because that's like my thing. It's so funny. Like I like working in threes. So if I can always have like just 2 random weird projects going on, and then my third project, my personal project, if I can have that, then I'm good. Because like what I feel like what I need to start doing now is like I have well over probably like 50 short stories I've written, and some of them are like, they vary from I think my best one's at like an 8, and my worst one's probably like a 4. So I have some, and like what I need to do is I need either like, I'm just like sitting on them, and like what am I, there's absolutely no point in having these if I'm just going to sit here and not do anything with them. So I need to start like putting more into like just like they have all these like there's all these grants they have online, like these writing grants that if you just send people work and you let them read it from like universities, you can either get like money towards that university, or you can get money for a grant to like write a short story, or you're gonna get like your short story, or you'll like be able to like then get in contact with somebody and get published. And like, yeah, like John, if you're doing this all the time and like you've been told, like humble brag here, I was a junior and I had the linguistic teacher from UCLA. She read one of my stories. She said, like I really had no like when I first was gonna read your story, I'm like, I don't think, I'm like, who is this kid? Like he's not gonna be that. Who are you? And because I knew someone that knew her, and I was like, hey dude, could you possibly just like have her read this and like just get my feedback on her, because she is in connections with a lot of different production houses and a lot of publishing places, like just like independent ones. And so she was like, she's like, okay, I guess I can try. And I'm like, sweet, thank you so much. So I gave her a version of one of my stories, which was like, it was called At That Time. It's such a weird little story I have. It's called Acting White. And it's just like, it's a third person point of view of a kid coming from a third world country and growing up in the middle, like the suburbs of the Jewish suburbs of the Midwest, and then going to college, like out into, in the story, it's it's actually changed several times, but in the version I sent, it was moving to New York, and seeing that, like, the whole reason why you wanted to do that as someone who's like, came from a third world country, like a bunch of brown people, then having to act white to end up getting like the best opportunities you can have, and then moving to New York and thinking that this is like what you want as someone who's like brown, who's like been around brown people, but then got adopted, and you're around a bunch of white people, that like being in a place where there's like such a mixed culture. Well, then you realize like, oh, well, where I was from, it was actually kind of nice because I was only, the pepper in the land of salt. And so I used a lot of metaphors like that. And it's just one of those stories. And like the main character ends up having sex with a light skinned black girl. And like there's like a love affair that occurs in the whole story. And it's a nice little thing. Then it ends with him just kind of looking onto life and sitting in a mercado, a new one. Because when in the beginning of the story, he talks about what he would do to act brown or to be brown, to feel like he's close to his culture, is he would park his Honda at the edge of the white part of town, and then walk over and get his hair cut at the black barber shop, and then go to the jazz district and like listen to jazz music and things like that. There's just those kind of things. And then going to the mercado, which is basically like a Latin market kind of thing. And then at the end of the story, he talks about how he's like in his new mercado in New York City, and he's like just fooling with sugar packets as the world goes by. It's just kind of like this really interesting little story. And when I wrote it, I was like, oh, dude, maybe like this is on something. Maybe I'm on something. And that was 2010. Or maybe 2000, the summer of 2009 to 2010, something like that. And I'm like, I really kind of felt like I was like, oh, I'm on the trigger of something, because this is going to blow up. Something like this kind of thing, that like this whole culture thing, something's going to occur with this. And I was in college, and like when you're in college and in film school, one of the big things you're taught is like, you need to understand like the zeitgeist. You need to understand the pulse of humanity in the time that you live in, or the time that is occurring. So I was always thinking, I'm like, this is like kind of bubbling up, and I could feel it, because especially as being someone who's mixed and who's so light, I have a really weird perspective, and I have an interesting point of view of being a brown person growing up versus someone who's darker than I am and who had the same experience. If you took someone who was born in a third world country and got adopted by white people and then had the opportunities that I had, I feel like I was able to use and take advantage a lot more than someone who's in the same situation who's a little bit darker than me. And it's not by anything, not because I'm better than them. It's just because like I look like a white guy, and I talk like a white guy, and I do weird white guy things like talking to a microphone and looking to a camera on a third floor of a mansion. So when you do things like this and you act like this, and you had white family, sorry, I didn't mean to clear my throat right into the microphone. It's just weird things happen sometimes, and like I have experienced white privilege. Like, so you guys want to know a story? This is one of the most funniest stories, and this is completely erasing. And do not think I'm not going to talk about how I think Eazy-E's music is horrific. It's awful. It's not good at all. I don't understand why people like it. It sounds like a 14-year-old white boy wrote his lyrics. There, I said it anyway. So let me tell you a story of some weird, like privilege that I had once. Okay, so, God, I can't believe I'm going to tell this story. Let me clear my throat, and let me drink a little bit of water first, because sit down, boys and girls. This is an interesting and funny story. I've been waiting to tell the story, actually. This is great. It's about 15 minutes. I should be able to take about 15 minutes to tell the story. So, this was about a couple years ago. I had just moved to Kansas City, and I was living in Los Angeles, came to Kansas City. So in Los Angeles, pot is nothing, not a big deal at all. Like, everyone kind of does it. It was kind of weird because I went to film school, lived out there after film school, and I worked in the industry. And like, it's one of those things, like, everyone smokes pot in film. Like, it's just kind of a normal thing. or like even when you go to parties, like you just go and it's if it's offered, you just kind of do it. It's going to be offered. You just kind of just do it, and it's a little fun thing, and just one of those things that filmmakers do as their things. Because like like comedians do things. Comedians act a certain way around other comedians. Filmmakers act a way. Painters act a way around other painters. Like it's the same thing with it. When you're within the group of your art. You act, and there's just certain mannerisms, and there's certain things that are just kind of normal, and you understand them. I don't know why I'm making a big deal about this, but yeah, but pot is a big thing. But I guess it's because it's kind of the center point of the story. I guess why I'm doing that. But anyway, fast forward to living in Kansas City. So I was working at this point. I was working 2 jobs, and one I was just like as a line cook, and then the other one was I was just a dishwasher at a country club, and at a country club. So I would work I was working, I don't know, close to like 15 hours in a day, and then I would work out after that. So I would get done with the gym at like 12:30, 1 o'clock in the morning, and I'd be coming home. I'd get something. At that time I'd always eat these little burritos. I would make these little bean burritos. And I was eating one. It was so stupid. I should have just like parked my car. Well, I should have just ate them in the parking lot and then drove. But I was driving and eating one. I just wanted to get home because I was tired. I had taken my shower. I had done everything. I just wanted to go home and pass out. And so what I did was I was eating, and then I took my hands off the wheel, and so I drifted from one lane to another, and I was just in the suburbs, so no big deal. I was in Overland Park area, Lenexa. And Kansas, and then I saw a car like that started following me. I'm like, that's interesting. I thought it was just a Jeep at first, and so I was like, no big deal. I'm not even gonna worry about it. No big deal. So I just keep on driving. I turn, and he turns with me, and then I keep on driving. And then I turn left, and the car again falls and turns again, and then the light turns on. I'm like, fuck. I'm like, a cop. Damn. Okay. I'm like, well, I don't know why he pulled me over or anything like that. And I'm like, well, all right, well, let's see what it is. And I was like a little worried because I had some pot in my car. I had half a blunt, and I had a grinder and a little bit of pot in the grinder. And and so the cop came up to my window, and he was like, okay. He's like, hey, my name is, officer such and such. The reason I pulled you over is because you did a weird swerve a while back, and I just wanted to follow you and make sure that you're not inebriated or anything. And I'm like, oh, that's fine. I'm like, that's understandable. I'm like, no, I have not been drinking anything tonight. He's like, okay. So he's like, he took my driver's license. He looked at it. He looked at me, and he's like, what's the highest education you've had? And he's like, I know this is a weird question. I'm like, I have an undergrad. And then he's like, okay. He's like, do you know your evens and odd numbers? I'm like, yeah. He's like, tell me your odd numbers. I'm like, 1, 3, 5, 7. And he's like, okay. And he like military style, like hit like his feet together and like turned and like went back. It was just very weird how he did it. I could definitely tell that he was in the military at one point. And then it was like a little bit of time passed. A little bit more time went. And I'm like, okay, well, like, fuck. Like, I'm like, I don't understand why he's not coming back with, like, my stuff. And then, like, I saw another cop car pull up. And then, at that time, he came back to my car. And he was like, Mr. Klaus, like, when was the last time you smoked any pot? He's like, no, he asked me how much pot is in the car. And I'm like, oh, I mean, like, there's like a little bit in the center console and there's a blunt. And he's like, okay, can you step out? I'm like, yeah, of course. So I got out because I'm not even going to fuck with cops with that kind of stuff. I'm not going to lie to them because, like, I figure, like, hey, their job's hard enough. It's at nighttime. I understand. Like, and plus, like, as a brown person, I always knew that, like, when I got pulled over, turned the headlights on, like, turn the overhead light on, turn, like, all the lights on as you can, and then put both hands on the wheel and have your driver's license and your insurance ready. I just knew. That's how I there's no need to fuck with them. There's no need to, like, and I was always taught by cops that, like, if you just did that, it's going to ease the situation a lot more. So I was like, okay, so I just got out and I was like, yeah, he's like, and then he asked me, like, have you been smoking pot tonight? I'm like, nope, I'm just, like, coming back from the gym. And that was it. And then so he went and he searched my car and I'm like, yeah, I can tell you exactly where it's at. So I told him where it was. And then he got out of the stuff, he found the pot and he found the blunt, and then he made me to do a field variety test. Passed it, no big deal. And then he was like, sir, I still have to arrest you for the marijuana. I'm like, I mean, I understand that. And so he he pulled me over was in the suburbs area, and I was in the backseat of the truck, the cop car. And he was like, he came back in the car and he told me that, he was going to have to, like, I have two options here. I'm like, yeah, what are these options, sir? He's like, I can either tow your car, or what I can do is I can take your keys and I can drive your car up and I can park it over to the side. I'm like, yeah, I mean, that would be awesome if you could do the second option. He's like, okay. So he got into my car, turned it on, drove it maybe, I would say 75 yards, and then turned right and parked it into a neighborhood area. And I'm like, awesome. And this is the other cool thing that he did. And this is like, I don't know if you can call it white privilege or you can just call it just a cop. Just understand, like, hey, dude, like, can't believe I'm arresting you for pot. I'm sorry, but you're in Kansas, so that's how it's gonna be. Is that I saw him coming back to the cop car, and I saw him had like some bags in his hand, and then I got closer. I could see that he had my film camera, and he had my camera bag that had all my lenses in it. And he's like, hey, I grabbed this stuff because I just wanted to make sure that, like, your car didn't get broken into, because there's been a lot of break-ins in this area. I'm like, oh, well, thank you. And so we were driving, and he's like, so what do you do? I'm like, I'm a filmmaker. I just moved here from Los Angeles. I'm just starting to do my independent stuff now. It's a lot cheaper to do it here. At that point, I was also working for a production house. Like, I was doing some, like, just BS stuff on the weekends for this production house. And so he's like, oh, that's really cool. I'm like, yeah. So we get to the police station, and we walk in, and at this point, like, he just like took the handcuffs off me, and he's like, can you just sit down here? Don't go anything. I need to go in the back and get some stuff. He's like, just don't run away or anything like that. He like totally trusts me. Like, what am I going to do? I'm not going to do that stuff. Like, it's just like, it's very obvious. Like, I had no ill intentions, and I like to think that, like, there's moments in life when, like, you need to be serious. There's no times, like, when the innocence is going to be showing, even not innocence, but like just purity of, like, just being a nice person is going to show. And a lot of my times like this, like, it's just like, I'm like, yeah, like, I'm not going to do anything fucking dumb. Like, that, dude. Like, we get this. Like, I'm just trying to be a filmmaker. I'm just trying to do silly stuff, trying to make funny little videos, try to make podcasts. I don't have any time to do anything stupid to get a felony. Anyway, so he just sat me there, and then we were talking, and he like was booking me, and he's like, so where are you from? And I'm like, I'm from Honduras, like San Pedro Sula, Honduras. And so he's like, Honduras. And he's like, where is that? I'm like, Central America. He's like, oh. I'm like, yeah. He's like, how do you spell Honduras? So I had to spell Honduras for him. And so this was funny. And then when I end up, like, the whole thing ended up like ending, he gave me my ticket, so I ended up having to pay like a bond out. It was like $250, no big deal. Luckily I just had a lot of cash on me because I had picked up rent money just that afternoon prior to like that pullover that night. So I paid the bond. He ended up like just driving me back to my car, and then he gave me back my film stuff. And then that was it. And he got out of his car, and he shook my hand. He's like, hey, dude, like, I'm sorry I had to arrest you. I'm like, oh, no big deal, man. I understand. I understand. I'm like, thanks for being cool about this, and thanks for driving me back. Thanks for just looking out for me. He's like, no big deal. I had nothing else to do. And then I looked on my ticket. After all this thing, I looked at my ticket, and then like under race, it said white. So like, so do I understand like white privilege? Yeah. I'm like, and then. It just, so out of the whole thing, it's just a weird thing. But don't forget, guys, Eazy-E's music's not that good. I don't even know why I went on that rant of that story. To tell you the truth, I just was like, okay, John, I'm like, I've been wanting to tell that story. There's a lot of details I left out, which is like, fuck. We'll work on it. Like, that's like the first time I have never even written down that story. That's the first time just telling it from like memory and actually putting it down into an actual format of something. So you guys heard that one first. So I hope you guys enjoy it. But yeah, it was so like I understand like there's just I don't even know where we were going with that with being I know there's like what white privilege and being brown and white and all that stuff, and it's a good time. We're getting back to it, guys, aren't we? We are getting back to it. So I was at the library the other day. I know, right? Library. Like why would you be at the library? So I was there and I was getting a book because I couldn't find the PDF version of it online, because I usually if you just Google like the title of a book and PDF, then you can usually just find it. Not gonna lie, it might take you like 4 or 5 pages deep, but you'll eventually be able to find it and download a version of it if you want to do that instead. Just letting you guys know that is a way. I did that all the time in college. I never paid for a book in college. Never. I just Googled the book and then PDF version of it. And if I didn't find it, my friend found it. And then we would just give each other of it on a hard drive. It was a good time. It was a good life. It was fun. But yeah, so I was at the library. And when I was there, I saw an old friend of mine from high school. I saw his dad. And I went up to him like, hey, how are you doing, Mr. Hoffman? And he's like, hey, how are you doing? I'm doing good. He's like, are you doing how you doing with all this stuff that's going on? We just had a full conversation. And at the very end of it, he's like, what's your name, by the way, again? Like, and I'm like, oh, my name's John. He's like, how do I know you? I'm like, I was friends with your son, Michael. And he's like, oh, yeah. Okay. So it's funny how these things happen. This is my life. It's always humbling. You live through life and you're like, yeah, like this is what we're doing. This is how we're doing it. And then these things happen. And guys, you know what? Like, dude, do you know this is how it feels to bomb? I've bombed so hard on this podcast. To tell you the truth, this is what we're doing. This is what happened. Bombing on this podcast and bombing in real life. And guess what? I have there's this little, and to tell you the truth, I have no idea what it is, but at my job, they're doing some entertainment thing for the residents, because I work at like a retirement resort, and I work in the kitchen, and they do these little events for them all the time. Like, these are just old, rather upper class, rich white people. But they're doing some show thing for them, and they asked me, they're like, hey, we're having all the guys do tell dad jokes. And I'm like, yeah, that's cool. I'm not going to, I'll go up there and I'll tell jokes, but I'm not going to fucking tell dad jokes. I'm going to tell my own shit. I'll write something up that's like clean, but like I'm going to do my own thing. I'm not going to do some dad jokes. Not doing it. I'm not going to it's just a different person standing up to because if there's 10 guys, it's going to be just 10 different people saying dad jokes when there could just be one person telling dad jokes. If I'm going to be up there, I'm going to do something different. It doesn't make any sense. I'm just not going to waste my time doing it if it's not like that. And I think it's a good exercise to just sort of sit and bomb in front of a bunch of people, feel how that feels for a while, versus just sitting in a room and bombing by yourself here. But yeah, we have about a minute left, guys. I don't know. This podcast literally went nowhere. You know what? Sometimes I feel hey, John, you did something. This one, I feel like I did nothing. I think it's because I'm so tired. I just want to sleep. I really do. If I could sleep right now, I would. But I got to go do some fun stuff now. I got to be around people. So, guys, I will talk to you guys later. Enjoy this video. Leave a comment. A thumbs up is nice. Do what you want to do. I'll see you guys on the next episode. Yeah, Aaron and John show will be up on Thursday. I think Aaron's back in town. All right. This video will cut off in 3, 2, 1. Bye.